You mentioned George Kittle will transition to the present. George held court today in front of his locker, and I asked him, I said, George, because I don't know, I'm like, I don't mind teams. I don't mind players complimenting one another. I don't mind hey, man, I got great respect for Andy Reid. Hey, man, I got great respect for Brock Purdy. I don't mind that stuff. But I get to a boiling point, and then I'm just like, can somebody please put their foot down and say that they're pissed off that they've dropped 4 in a row? I feel like the only person in the whole Niners sphere who's willing to put their foot down and say enough is a freaking enough. No, I was going to say it's Steve Young on KMBR. Steve Young has more passion to end this 4-game losing streak than I've heard from any 49er coach or player. Can I have one Niner player who'd be like, I don't like the Chiefs, I hate them, and I'm sick of getting trounced by them, and I'm ready to turn this thing around. I asked Kittle today, what is it gonna take to beat the Chiefs? And he brought up, he's like, I think the 2 keys are run the ball 30 times and don't turn it over. And I looked up the numbers and the matchups. Niners have 7 turnovers, Cam, in the last 3 games. So he's spot on. If the Niners take care of the ball, they got a shot. If they don't, they got no shot.
Okay, 2 things. One, the modern day players can't say anything like that because it's if they still have bulletin boards, they would go on it. But I will say Fred Warner came the closest to anybody this week because the daggers that he was shooting and not saying many words in response to the 4th and 1 questions, that spoke volumes because Fred's usually very gregarious and politically correct. And when somebody asked him, he's like, oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun watching that tape, like very deadpanning. Like, don't you dare ask. You know how painful this is. So I thought Fred's already in game mode, which is awesome. And I thought he was in game mode going into Seattle, too. So when your defensive MVP is ready to roll, that's going to trickle down. And then, I forgot my other point of view on that. But I just think that they'll figure that out. They know that this is the team. Here's how I look at it. Of course there's not a Lombardi trophy at stake. Of course this is not going to give them revenge for the last 2 Super Bowl losses. But it's a great dress rehearsal because if you end up somehow meeting the Chiefs in February in New Orleans in the Superdome, where there's a game going on right now, by the way, Broncos are up 13-0, then you're going to want to know kind of what this team looks like right now. And it's not the same team as last year, same with the Niners. But you have the same coaches, and you kind of see how they want to play you. It's this cat-and-mouse chess match that Shanahan covets, and the toughest opponent for him has been Steve Spagnuolo. So this is, to me, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating regular season matchup, and okay, it doesn't matter in the division, it doesn't matter in the conference standings, but psychologically, if the Niners win this game after just winning big in Seattle, then here you could get that roll going like they did the last couple of years and just get moving.
I think what's on the line is the swagger. I think the Niners have lost their swagger, and I don't. It doesn't seem like the same team. Maybe it's because of Greenlaw, but they don't seem like the same team to me. If they beat this Chiefs team, I think that would be a huge swagger will return. No Jawan Jennings today, and he didn't practice yesterday. He's got a hip injury. You think he's going to go on Sunday, or do you think this is the opening for Ricky Pearsall?
I don't think he's going to go. Do I think Ricky Pearsall is going to get activated? I think Ricky Pearsall is ready to get activated, but I'm not the coach, so I don't exactly know. I mean, remember, Ricky missed so much time in training camp with the shoulder injury, and camp was over when he survived his death-defying gunshot wound through the chest. And I will say, when you talk about swagger, Ricky Pearsall has brought it back this week.
He does. He's a confident kid, isn't he?
But look at how the effect on the teammates. Everybody has this joy again, and everybody loves talking about him. And they don't love talking about him in the fact that he's a human being that survived the scariest incident possible, because they know how hard he worked and how great he could be, and that he's infectious. And you need – Dre Greenlaw had that on defense, like you were saying, right? Well, Ricky, I don't want to put too much on him because he hasn't played a snap yet. But, I mean, Greg Papa here on KNBR can't stop raving about how great Ricky Pearsall is, and he hasn't played a snap yet. But it's that contagious optimism and joy for football that this team has lacked the first couple months because of all the business matters of contracts and losing. And then here comes this guy that's like, listen, we're playing ball. Let's have some fun out here. And I'm going to go full speed on a walkthrough to show you I can't wait to play some football. Now, so it's a matter of, will he have to wait another week? If they wait another week, then they play the Cowboys, right?
Right.
So he'll have like a full week of practice in him, which usually is kind of the ramp up that you need to play, because it's really hard. Like if you've been off and not practiced for a month and a half, and you've gone through this tragic or almost tragic incident, that's asking a lot to put a guy in this game. And I think the Niners got to watch out for that and understand that. If you hold him out for the Cowboys, maybe that's a little bit more acceptable, and then the buys after that. So then he has 3 full weeks to get ramp up for when they go play in Tampa. I think it's Tampa or whatever. So that, to me, would make a lot more sense for Ricky's intro. But just watching him out there, I want to see him play. I mean, we don't get to watch practices, everybody. It's like once training camp's over, we are kicked out after they do warm-ups. So for the first time in a long time in warm-ups, I just was watching players' feet because they line up two receivers at a time as they get going off the line. And I didn't want to see which person was which until they took off. And Ricky Pearsall's feet, his footwork, I'm like, oh man, that guy's fast. Just the way he shuffles his feet and gets there, I'm like, I want to see him play.
Mayoko thinks that the loss to the Chiefs may have led to the Pearsall draft pick. And it is interesting because, they did play 60% man in the Super Bowl, and the Niners receivers struggled to free themselves up. And this guy, I asked Purdy about him today, and Purdy said, man, this guy can free himself up against man coverage. I think they've earmarked this Kansas City game. I mean, I don't think it's everything, but I think they'd like to throw him out there against Kansas City because I think this is a guy that they feel like they're going to get a lot of man, and I think they feel like this is a guy who can beat man. It's a lot.
Yeah, but that may have been the case before. Like,
yeah,
when you consider the circumstances, so that throws the whole timeline off. But I think also there's so many other factors that go into drafting him in terms of, all right, well, do we know what's going to happen with Ayuk?
Right.
Is Debo going to be here long term? We need depth. And it's like they don't want to use it on an offensive lineman because we saw that they passed on guys, and they always, it seems like they always do. I was actually just really surprised that they didn't draft a defensive end because I mean, I know they draft a lot of defensive linemen over the last 10 years for first-round pick, but that's for good reason because you need to rotate guys through so much, and it's like it's still so scarce. Like, you are really hitching your wagon to Bosa and Leonard Floyd to get after Mahomes and everybody after that, where there's the depth afterwards, and you've already lost some defensive tackles. It's like, you need that because that whole defensive engine is on the defensive front, all due respect to Fred Warner's greatness.
It's so funny, and it makes you wonder about the trade deadline. I remember talking to you before, doing an interview with you before the McCaffrey trade, and it was like a couple days before. I said, "Do you think they'll make a trade for McCaffrey?" And you're like, "No, I don't." And
nope.
And you're like, "I don't think they need him. I mean, they got Wilson and they got Mitchell and they got other guys." But then they wanted McCaffrey, and that was probably going back to that draft where they felt like they
should have drafted him.
They felt like they should have drafted him. What do you think this year? The trade deadline's a couple weeks away. Man, there's people throwing out Max Crosby. That's not happening.
No.
Somebody threw out Dexter Lawrence today. That's not happening. I can't believe that. But what do you think? Because Lynch has almost popularized the midseason trade to the point where there's now more bidders. But I almost expect them to be active. What do you expect?
Kind of. I mean, if they can, let's see, so the Broncos are what? They're 3-3, right? And we all thought everybody's identified DJ Jones, reunite him with the Niners, bring him back if the Broncos stink because he's ending up his deal in Denver. He's playing. I don't think they deal him, but that's one name to watch. Do they go with another defensive line? Well, look, you're going to get Yetur Gross-Matos back probably in a couple of weeks after the bye, right? So it's like, you're going to have reinforcements there coming. Dre Greenlaw's going to come and join the linebacker crew hopefully after the bye. Ricky Pearsall's coming for wide receiver. So to me, it's like, what's the situation with Christian McCaffrey? That, to me, the running back situation is the number one target if you're going to draft or trade for somebody because – we've had no sighting of Christian McCaffrey in about 2 months on a field, and all we get are reports that he's progressing in his rehab, but it's such a serious injury, and I hope to God everything's going great with it because he's such a great talent, obviously, Offensive Player of the Year last year, means so much to this offense. And Jordan Mason, he gets dinged in Seattle, and all you go, is everything cool with just giving it to Isaac Orendo, letting him go? Because I don't think Debo's a full-time back, because the defenses are all over him anytime he's in the backfield. And the Niners, as great as Purdy's become as a passer and as all these targets, still so much of this game revolves around a run game. And if you look around the league, and I'm going to borrow a line from Malik Collins because I talked to him this week. He goes, look around the league. The winning teams are the ones that are running the football. And that's absolutely true. Although except the Chiefs. The Chiefs are an anomaly because they have a guy named Patrick Mahomes throwing the football. But for the most part, like of the top, actually I think of all like the first place teams, they're all pretty much ranked in the top 10.
You're totally right. Yeah, no, you run the ball, stop the run. It's the oldest way to win, but it's still still holds true here in 2024. Last one for you before we let you out of here. The Niners have issues, right? They're 3-3. They've lost some 3 one-score games. They turn the ball over probably a little bit too much. But what's the primary issue? Is it special teams? Is Schneider going to get dumped? Is it the red zone offense? Is it the lack of pass rush from the defensive ends? Is it the shoddy tackling? I mentioned to Sorensen today, 42 missed tackles in the last 3 weeks. Is it Devondre Campbell? Is it defending vertical receivers like JJ and Atwell this week, Xavier Worthy? I mean, if I say to you, number one concern for you going into week 7 for the Niners, what is it?
Closing out games.
Finishing. Yeah, that's a good one.
Finishing. It's finishing. I mean, they blew the games against the Rams and Cardinals because they couldn't finish. They blew the Super Bowls against the Chiefs because they couldn't finish. And how do you finish? To me, you get that. And Kyle alluded to this earlier today on KNBR. Is for the past year and a half, they've had pretty much double-digit leads, and so you're not going to blow that. And they've won comfortably, and now they have to learn how to win uncomfortably. And instead of winning uncomfortably, they're losing. And by 20 points was barely enough to get through in Seattle, right? That lead was dwindling fast. Hopefully they found some kind of elixir, which happened to be a Renardo Green interception that kind of helped turn the tide. But of all those, the Super Bowl had so many reasons why they lost. Like you just said, there's so many reasons this team is 3-3. But one of them was they're not a penalty-prone team. That bad teams are full of penalties, right? Like uncharacteristic. The guys don't know what they're doing.
Sure.
This is not a bad team. It is a championship contending team in a conference where the toughest team right now is Minnesota. And if they make it to the NFC Championship game, it'll be back in Minnesota is the way it's looking. The Niners can win the West. They're probably not going to, the wild card may come out of another division. I have a hard time buying also that the NFC North is going to get all these wild cards because they haven't played each other yet. They're going to cannibalize each other the way the NFC West already has. There's only been one division-on-division game in the NFC North. So those teams will take some hits. But I think Minnesota right now is the top of the NFC. The Niners know it. And I think, as George Kittle said, that Minnesota defense is, I believe he said it's wild, the way they scheme guys. So I can't wait to see a rematch there. It's just going to be it's going to be a lot different in that dome. The dome was very humid and warm in week 2 when the Niners went in because they had the doors open. It'll be closed in January if the Niners have to go back there. But that's where I see it.
Wow, wouldn't that be something? Niners back in Minneapolis. Yeah. I kind of think Green Bay is going to get better between now and the end, but I could see Niners Packers. But Niners Vikings, Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy for the right to go to the Super Bowl. That would be great theater. Cam, awesome stuff, man. Once again, everybody go out and get the book. It's called The Franchise: A Curated History of the 49ers. It's an awesome read. Cam does an amazing job as a Niner media person and stuff, man. Thanks for jumping on Niners Nightly, and you're always welcome. Hopefully we'll do it again in a few weeks.
Larry, thanks, and thanks for the nice words. Appreciate it.
I mean, you're the best, man. Have a great night.
Thank you.